So guys, is this visible? I hope the screen is visible and I hope I am audible. Can someone confirm? Okay. Okay. So I'll just introduce myself. Okay. So I'll introduce myself again. I'm PK Sidharth Ramkumar. Uh, I graduated in architecture and in 2019, and then I got into Indian Post and Telecom Accounts and Finance Service via CSE 2020. And then I got into Indian Police Service 2021 CSE 22 batch, West Bengal cadre. And in 2023 CSE, I got All India rank 4. So today we'll try to discuss few questions from GS1 of last year's paper 2023. So basically the idea is just to give an idea about how to approach the paper. This is just some of the suggestions that I have, or how I would go about few of the questions which I took from mostly history, society, and art and culture of GS1 paper. I've taken 5-6 questions. I wanted to do more, but we'll do the other ones in the later videos if time permits. Okay, so we'll get into it right away. So this is basically 2023 mains general studies paper 1. Okay. 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 So this is the first question. First question that I took. So this question is basically explain the role of geographical factors in development of ancient India. So this I think is the first question in that paper. So basically we'll just go about how we'll address any similar question and not just particularly this question, although we'll try to answer this question as well. So, in general, this is a history question with some emphasis on geographical factors. So, let's say I don't know anything, I'm just brainstorming the answer. So, basically, my framework is like um, there's an introduction, it's a 10 marker. So, basics again, we'll go to the basics again, we'll start with the basics. So, it's a 10 marker. So, roughly 10 points, 2 or more subheadings. If it's a 15 marker, 15 points, 3 or more subheadings. That is my basic thumb rule. And then there is an introduction, there's a body, then there's a conclusion. Some catchy introduction, and then if it's a 10 marker, we have 10 points, roughly 10 points, 8 to 10 points, divided into 2 or more subheadings. And if it's a 15 marker, we have 15 points roughly in 3 or more subheadings, ideally. Okay. Now coming back, so how to generate points in a history question. So what do I do? Like explain the role of geographical factors in development of ancient India. It's a 10 marker. So I need 10 points. I need 2 or more subheadings. So the first thing that I can think of is the history syllabus itself, something like the chronology. It's a question on ancient India. Uh, so what are the things that come to our mind? Like first thing is IVC, Indus Valley Civilization. Then we have the Vedic age. Then we have the post Vedic age. Then we have something probably something before. Then we have something like Mahajanpad time. We have something some kingdoms from South India, Chola, Chera, Pandya, and such things. And then we have something from Northeast also. Um, and then we have Buddhism, Jainism. Then I think ancient India. Let's like although there's no clear boundary, we can roughly say it ends with Harsha. So we have so much of things that are there in our mind, and then so we have that straight away gives us about 7 points. So Indus Valley civilization. The question is geographical factors. So what can I connect? I know something like there are ports, Lothal port. So there's something which has a geographical significance. It helps in economic geography. It's clearly connected to economic geography, and it's connected to the development of Indus Valley civilization as a whole. So that's one point that comes to my mind. Then I can think about even before that we have something like the tectonic plates hitting. This is not ancient India in particular; it goes beyond. So that's something that comes to my mind. So I'm just trying to brainstorm. Then so the tectonic plate, the Eurasian plate being hit by the other plate, and then that's how the Himalayas came up. And then that influenced the intensification of monsoon and everything that is connected to India's climate in ancient India. Then in Vedic time, we have the Saraswati River, the Ghagar, the drying of that, how that was influential in the development of the Vedic civilization, and how the drying of that resulted in the decline of many kingdoms there. Then post Vedic, or we have the trade routes. We have the two major trade routes, and we have many stories also associated, like the Ayodhyan princess going to South Korea. So that there are trade routes within India and which connects India to Southeast Asia and West Asia. Then going south. So the point is, like, we can take one point from every stage in the chronology of ancient India. That gives us some dimensions. And then in history, try to remember to take some points from South India, from Northeast India. Try to include women. Um, because these are all aspects that have been asked previously in the previous year questions in modern India, in ancient and medieval. So that gives us dimensions on how to think. So we have points like IVC, tectonic, Vedic, trade routes, post Vedic, Buddhism, Jainism. How you can connect it to any river, you can connect it to any tree, you can connect it to any flora, fauna, you can connect it to anything related to geography. So those are some dimensions how you can connect. So you're connecting geographical factors with things that come up in the chronology of ancient India. And then you can also connect it. And again, so in any answer, now the question is that a question is asking you to explain the role of geographical factors in development of ancient India. But again, you can also think about how geographical factors led to positive development or rise of civilizations, kingdoms, and uh, how it also led to the decline. For example, so we have multiple points for how geographical factors like mountains, Himalayas, or other mountains or rivers, or economic geography, ports, or other factors that led to the development or intensification of various cultures and kingdoms. And we also can think about the negative aspect because it makes the answer a little more holistic. Something like how one theory of the decline of Indus Valley civilization notes that the drying up of the Indus tributaries was one of the major reasons that led to the decline of the mature Harappan phase, or something like how the decline of Muziris in South, especially in Kerala, how that was also because of climatic factors, how various climatic factors led to the change in the decline of the port of Muziris, and then opening up of various other ports. So you can try to make it holistic by adding examples from North India, South India, if possible, something from Northeast India and other parts. So that's about how you can approach the body and introduction. So history, my go-to way of how connecting, like answering the introduction for a history answer, is to come up with something that is related to a previous event, and then conclusion connecting it to an event that follows. But then here, because they are asking about ancient India, either you can connect it with something that happened before, that is prehistoric, something like how the tectonic plate hitting resulted in the rise of Himalayas, that resulted in the entire idea of India, Indian climate, Indian subcontinent being based around monsoon and such things. So you can connect it with a previous event, previous thing, even previous to ancient, which we understand as in the modern, ancient, medieval, modern classification. So that's one way to go about an introduction, do an introduction. And then if you use that logic, you can conclude that answer by connecting it with how even now geography shapes the development of modern India, or how it shaped the development of medieval India, and continues to influence, or how it continues to play a role in the development of modern India. Something like how the modern steps, like steps taken by the government of India at this point of time, like development of highways or waterways. You can even go to the extent of naming some of the schemes and connecting it with the same idea, that how that as development of geographical factors, how that proves that the geographical factors play a major role in development of a nation, especially India. So basically, just summarizing again, the question basically it's a history question. So introduction could be a previous event, and conclusion could be connecting it with a next event, or alternatively, you can use the introduction. You can use some book as an introduction. For example, Sanjeev Sanyal's book, like The Land of Seven Rivers, talks about how history should not be viewed just through the prism of ancient, medieval, modern, but also through some other frameworks wherein the natural and human landscapes that shaped it also could be a frame through which you can analyze history. So something like that, some book on geography and history, like Sanjeev Sanyal, I think, has written 2 to 3 books, but only if that comes to your mind. So if something like that fancy, if something fancy like a book written by any famous thinker, uh, it can be, if not for this question, in general for history questions, you can use Shashi Tharoor's book or some other book. If you have read it, or if you have some idea about that, you can use it as an introduction or in the conclusion. So the whole idea in answer writing is that the introduction, you start well and you end well, and then the body, you have to have sufficient number of points. You have to hit on quality and quantity. So the quantity, as a thumb rule that I have, is 10 10 marker 10 points, roughly 2 or 3 subheadings. 15 marker 15 points, 3 or more subheadings. History question, so introduction could be something like a book or something in the current news, something in the current affairs that you can connect it with, or it could be like using the chronology itself. Body, talk about what is asked in the question, and introduction connected with the previous things in history, and concluded with things that happened in the later phases. Sure. You can use the Silk Road. You can use anything that resonates, that can be pertinent to the question. Okay, so this is so again summarizing: introduction fancy, conclusion you end well, you start well. The body should be good in terms of quantity. 10 marker 10 points, 15 marker 15 points. Roughly, you can hit 8 points, 7 points, no issues. But roughly, as a thumb rule, because you want some structure in mind so that you can go about easily. 15 marker 15 points, 10 marker 10 points, 2 or 3 subheadings, and try to make it holistic by not just talking about the positives. If even though this question seems like it is asking only the positives, you can talk about the negatives as well, how geography also led to the decline. So try to look at it from multiple standpoints in every question, although it is not very obvious from the question. Try to have the alternate viewpoint also in most of the questions. And then every point, like in the body, if it is 10 marker, if you have 10 points, try to have an example or a fact, have a stat or a quote or a fact or a committee recommendation, or quote an expert, or quote a book or something. Like have some factual backing to substantiate every point, if not every single point, most of the points. So that's about attempting the body. And then concluding, as I said, you can connect it with the later event or a book, or how it is relevant, or connect it with something that the government of India is doing in the year that you are attempting. Okay, so we look into the next question. So this is again a 10 marker question from history. So here the question is Gandhi versus Tagore, the difference between Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore in education and nationalism. So again, going by the framework that I said, it's a 10 marker. So you need 10 points. You need 2 or more subheadings. There is already 2 parts in the question. So 5 points for Gandhi versus Tagore, difference in education, and next 5 points, roughly 3, 4, 5 points in Gandhi versus Tagore in nationalism. It's not versus essay, but I'm just simplifying it. So 10 marker, 10 points, 2 subheadings. The 2 subparts are already given. Again, intro, you should start well and you should end well. And then in body, every point you need to have a fact or a stat or something to some value in every point. Ideally in every single point. Now, introduction, what can be the introduction? So I thought about something like so I have some general introductions that I prepared for history, art and culture, and such stuff. So one is like something like the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, as we are celebrating 75 years or 77 years, something like that. In that context, how this is important. So we are trying to say that as we are celebrating 75 years, or as we are celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, or 75 years of Agam, or something like that, in that particular context, it gains greater significance to understand the difference in how Gandhi and Tagore sought education or had views on education and nationalism, something like that. So you set the context and you connect it with something that you have prepared, something fancy. Alternatively, it could also be something like, again, if something was there in news recently in terms of education, like national education policy, if that was there, if this question had come in 2021, you could even use something from the current affairs, some news background. And if the question was Gandhi versus Tagore difference in education, you could use even something like national education policy, how that has come, and then how in that context the difference between views of Gandhiji and Tagore need to be analyzed, something like that in the introduction. And then in the body, again, directly two subheads here, three, four, 5 points in each. So I try to, like, basic points, whatever comes to your mind, something like Gandhiji, the basic things that would come to your mind is something like Naitalim, or emphasis on vernacular, or emphasis on skills, crafts by Gandhiji, or nationalistic ideas of Gandhiji versus internationalist style of Tagore, or some examples like Shanti Niketan, Vishwa Bharati, or how schools were started during the Gandhian movements like non-cooperation or something like that. So whatever comes, divided into 4 to 5. So I just try to divide it into how Gandhiji's idea was decolonizing Indian education versus Western, versus how Tagore had a very broader idea about including the Swadeshi and the Western, good things from the Indian and the Western side. Or another point could be something like how Gandhi was critical of technology or capitalism, versus how again Tagore wanted to combine tech and tradition, combine the best of both worlds. How Naithalam craft, those were the main ideas, vernacular, focusing on craft, versus Tagore had a little more holistic idea about having idealistic, like not just education, not just for jobs, not just for the for empowerment, but also for the sake of understanding, for the sake of the soul, as he noted. Or something like how Gandhi emphasized more on ethics, values, character, tradition, while again Tagore had a slightly wider view. Or and then the examples also where the again in the next subheading, Gandhi and Tagore difference in terms of nationalism. How Tagore was very critical about nationalism. He even went to the extent, according to certain reports, he even went to the extent of being critical of nationalism, saying that nationalism should be like he was a thorough nationalist. However, he was also the opinion that you should not be um, like you shouldn't affect your love for the country to affect the wider growth of everybody. Like it shouldn't be a hindrance to inclusive growth or growth of everybody in a very wider manner. Or something like how Gandhi focused more on Swadeshi. Gandhiji focused more on Swadeshi ideals during the non-cooperation and the other movements, versus while Tagore had certain reservations, had suggested that probably it could affect some sections of the society, including Indians. So they had slightly some differences, although the end goals were same. They had certain differences in terms of opinion on how to go about, on how to achieve freedom, on what type of freedom they envisaged for the nation. So you can connect it in terms of those points, whatever comes to your mind, not necessarily the points that I said, because ideally when you're thinking about a 10 marker in the exam hall, roughly 3 to 4 good points will come. But then try to use syllabus to come up with points, or try to think about the chronology. If it's a history question, either use syllabus or try to use the chronology. Think about all the things associated with Gandhiji, all the things associated with, if it is Subhash Chandra Bose, or if it is Tagore, whoever the visionary is asked, whichever visionary is asked in the question, try to think about everything, all the ideas associated with them, and just pick out whatever is pertinent to the demand of the question. So two subheadings. One is the difference in terms of education. Second is difference in terms of nationalism. And then again, how do you conclude it? As I said, try to conclude it on a high. I had some prepared conclusions like 51, Article 51 AB of the Constitution, which asks us to cherish the ideals of the freedom struggle. So ideally, we should be cherishing the ideals of both Gandhiji and Rabindranath Tagore in terms of education and in terms of nationalism. So try to connect it with how this is a constitutional goal. It's a fundamental duty of everyone, of every Indian, to cherish, to understand and appreciate and acknowledge the contribution of the different diverse views that they had, and try to use it for national development. Or you can even try to connect it with something like India 2047, how these ideals, concepts like these are still relevant, or how some core values associated with these ideas, like thinking global but acting local, something like that, how that could be important, or something like that. You can try to connect it with something that's going on like Atmanirbharta or something like that, and then end it well. So that was the second question. Again, I'll just try to summarize. It's a 10 marker, roughly 10 points, two or more subheadings, 15 marker, three subheadings, 15 points roughly. Started on a high, ended on a high. You can use anything. These are just some frameworks. Okay, someone asked about how to connect current affairs with historical point of view. Something like what anything that is connected to the history aspect or culture aspect. Like here, the question is asking about education. So you can connect something like national education policy, which emphasizes something uh, like vernacular, focus on vernacular, or focus on skills, focus on self-reliance, focus on the best of both worlds. Like wherever you think it's relevant, you can connect something like national education policy. You can even connect anything, like anything that you think is pertinent, where you can connect it with the question and demand, that you can add something like a book, something like a view of a contemporary thinker, any recent event in education, in nationalism, in some debate, like even problems. Like you can add a separate subheading like relevance, if time permits, if it's a 15 marker ideally, and then try to connect how, or in the body itself, you can try to like prove how this is relevant today. Like let's say if one point that I take is like ethics, values, character, tradition, so there I can quote some example of unethical behavior found in the industry, in civil service somewhere. uh, so I'll not quote any example because it could be like quote anything that you think was in news, and then you can try to say how you're not able to recall many points in very limited time. So the whole point I'm saying is just think about the syllabus. One is the syllabus to come up with points. Two is come up try to think about the chronology in history. Whatever that comes up comes to your mind with respect to chronology. Try to use those points. Like 5 to 10 points will come to your mind. Try to tweak them according to the demand of the question. Like if I think about Gandhiji, what comes to my mind? Something like Swadeshi, something like non-violence, something like ethics, values, something like whatever comes to my mind. How can I connect it with the demand of the question? And then my only point is like I have to have a solid framework, and then I put the points into that structure. So here the frame is fit. I have an introduction, fancy introduction, starting it on a high. I have a body, two subheadings. It's already there in the question. I just have to. So I put in the subheading, and then whatever point that comes to my mind, I just put it into the framework. And alternatively, for current and all, you can again thinking about nationalism. What comes to your mind? Anything positive? Anything that India is like something like Atmanirbharta, or anything negative also? Any recent instance where there was even employment crisis, skill, anything you can connect for Gandhiji? Absolutely, Dayanand, you are absolutely correct. But like, don't. The point is like in 7 minutes you have to write whatever comes to your mind. So I try to answer it in a very because on the day of the exam, you have to have prepared introductions, conclusions, frameworks. If it's a history question, how do you start? It's ideally better to have some thumb rules in your mind, so that you don't have to think on the spot. Although you need to think on the spot to tweak it according to the demand of the question. Still, if you have frameworks in mind, you have the frame, you know the introductions, you know the conclusions, you connect it to the question, and then according to the body you have the frame, subheads are there in the question, you just put it according to the question. Like you have the frameworks, and you put the points according to the question. That's all you have to do. Okay, so now we'll go into the next question. Socio-economic impact of railway in different parts of the world. So here, again, 10 marker, 10 points, two or more subheadings, introduction, anything. It could be anything from world. You can use it from Indian, this thing, relevance. Like, as I said, celebrating something, connecting it with something related to railways. Something like as India, something related to railways in the news, you can connect it with that. Or you can connect it with something in world, from a world history perspective also, because this you can't clearly put it into history side or geography. It can come in economic geography as well, or you can put it in world history as well. But it's more of an analytical question. And then conclusion, again, you can, as I said, you can end it on a high by connecting it with something in the current affairs. Like one conclusion possibly could be how, with steps like the Vande Bharat, increased capex, capital expenditure allocation, something like coverage extension, electrification, how these steps are ensuring that India is on track to use railways as a positive tool to unite people in borders and boost growth. This could be one way of approaching the conclusion, or you can put it in some other way also, because the question is not just related to India. So you can connect it with, in general, how, if you know something in news related to railways from different parts of the world, you can use that also to effectively use current affairs as a means to approach the conclusion of this particular question. And body, again, what comes to my mind? Socio-economic impact of railway. I'm saying it's a 10 marker. You need two subheadings. So one could be how it resulted in positive development, and another could be how it resulted in some negative socio-economic impacts. So some of the thing, like in India, it connected India in some way. In UK, it led to industrial revolution. That was good for UK. You can even add place names. Then, like, which areas were connected because of railway, which places. In North America, the Great Lakes region. So this answer I have prepared on the spot. Like, these are the only things that came to my mind. UK industrial revolution. I was not able to come up with points of places, because at this point of time I don't remember. Although I would have read something for last year. So whatever comes to your mind, try to use that. Some place in UK, if you can remember the coal rich region or the industrial region, railway region, you can add that as examples. In North America, Great Lakes region industrialization. Sir, if we have to think, brainstorm, and then is there any benefits of making comprehensive mains notes? Absolutely. The point is, like, you can prepare the introductions. Like, you can have 5 or 6 using the so all questions in mains comes from three things. It's either one, previous year questions last 10 years, or two, it is from the main subheadings, that the detailed subtopics given in the mains, or thirdly from current affairs. So one could be uh, Huh. So, any question? So you can prepare 5 to 6 possible introductions, possible general introductions for history. Because if you look at the PYQs, if you prepare 5 introductions and try it on the last 10 years questions, you can try to like, you can ensure that okay, your introductions are workable on the last 10 history questions or last 20 history questions. If you think it doesn't work, then prepare introductions for the previous year questions. One or two, maybe you will have to prepare a new introduction, but then still you will be having 5 to 6 introductions after you have prepared for the subtopics and the previous year questions. And in history and culture, hardly anything from current is asked. So when you're making notes, prepare introductions, prepare conclusions, prepare the frame. If it's a history question, how do you generate points? As I said, it could be the chronology, it could be the syllabus areas specified in the syllabus, or it could be if it is art and culture, it could be the different things in art and culture. Again, like index itself, the syllabus itself gives you points. If it is art and culture, you can use painting, you can use history, you can use sculpture, you can use architecture. Everything is a separate point. You just have to substantiate your point with some facts, some example, something. Okay, and then can we use other GS keywords? Absolutely. Can you drain of wealth railway as a means? Negative point can we write? Yes, I think I have also written that. So here another point is like mobility. In Canada, how Quebec, the French Quebec region, I think it's French, Quebec region was connected with the wheat regions. So how it resulted in mobility, connecting the different areas in a very vast continental size country like Canada, or something how in India ideas, people, local traditions, local trade, urbanization improved because of railways post 1856. You can even add examples. Then Trans-Siberian Rail, how continents were connected, Asia connected with Europe. Negatives, again, inequalities, drain of wealth. Northeast railway density is very less, so possibly that is one of the reasons. So you can write causal statements, how inequalities or how the development of Northeast uh, became a little less, possibly because of less or inequitable development of railways, or how the railways was used as a tool for de-industrialization of India, how it was used for export of finished goods and import of raw materials, how it was used for war by colonial powers, like in Boxer Rebellion, in other parts of the world, revolutionary activities. You can use all that, but try to divide it into positives, negatives, and try to ensure that you have at least 3 continents, like at least 3 nations covered, because it's a world history question. Displacement, etc. These points are just indicative. You can come up with anything. Point is, like, you remember the index chronology, or think about the different things, different parts, different players in world history, and try to pick out whichever are pertinent to the question. How do we prepare notes, mains notes, from the starting of the preparation, or is it after prelims? Like, you should ideally, once your one reading of everything, once one reading about all the basic books and GS for mains is done, I think you should prepare notes, including structures, including introductions, possible introductions, conclusions, etc. And try it. So you prepare it based on the subtopics given in the main syllabus, and then try to use it on the last 10 years previous year questions. Try to see whether they work. If you think for at least few questions they don't work, then you need to prepare some more notes, some more introductions, some more structures, uh, based on the questions where they were proven insufficient. Okay, we'll look at the next question. We'll look at 2 more questions. Society questions. So this is: do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing value in modern India? So one framework could be, it's a 10, again, it's a 10 marker, so two or more subheads. One, it's a society question. So so my go-to introduction in society is definition. Like, let's say in society, questions generally revolve around marriage, caste, tribal issues, gender issues, something like that. And then the definition could be, so here it's about marriage. So you can define what marriage is. It could be in your own words, or you can quote a thinker, or alternatively you can use a recent news event, like something like sologamy was in news, or something like something related to marriage, if that was in news, or some survey like the Pew survey or NFHS, something like that. If you think is connected to the question, you can use that as well. You can quote anthro socio thinkers, definitely in GS1. I used to quote, but then make sure that they are quite famous. Try to quote thinkers if you can. At least you can even quote thinkers from the newspapers. If you're reading Express or Hindu, you can even quote famous people who are writing columns in those. Anthro knowledge you can use. You can use Murdoch. You can use people from Socio, but try to use thinkers who are very famous. Okay. And conclusion. Okay, you can use quotes also in introduction. You can use definitions, quotes, new recent surveys, statistics, news event, anything. Conclusion. Again, you can use how it is relevant even now, or how things are changing in society. A good conclusion is how things are changing. Things like sologamy was news. Something like same-sex marriages were in news. So this could be an introduction, like how the same-sex marriage ruling or discussion by the Honorable Supreme Court has ignited debate on marriage again. So you can set the context using a news background, or you can end it using changes that are happening in the institution of marriage, how marriage as a sacrament is changing but still not losing value. And body, again, it's a 10 marker, so 2 subheadings, again easy ones. One is supporting the notion that, do you think marriage is that it is losing value? Yes, you give 4 to 5 points, and then no, second subpart, no, it is not losing value. Ideally, I would say put yes first, that it is losing value, and then put no, because then from that no, you are saying, and then you are concluding by saying that it is not losing value, but it is only changing, so it is in continuity. Can we write normative conclusion? Absolutely. No need of current affairs. So current affairs is just one of the ways in which you can approach the conclusion. You can use a normative one. Absolutely, yes. And then here in the body, one part, yes, you can talk about how it is changing in terms of the family as an institution is becoming a little more ego-centered, the person-centered, kindred relationship, or whatever they say, or something like live-in, how that is increasing, or how that is getting legal or support, or even how Honorable Supreme Court also said that live-in is possible. The right to choose your live-in partner is very much part of your rights and all that. You can talk about live-in. You can talk about ego-centered family groups. You can talk about things like situationships, like whatever fancy things that are there, which you can connect it to marriage or relationships. You can talk about adoption, because what are the, so another way in which society one, so in society, what are the dimensions you can think of? One is things like the syllabus gives you dimensions like women, caste, tribal issues, regionalism, communalism, urbanization, modernization, globalization, poverty, inequality, social institutions, culture, and identity. So these are the dimensions from the syllabus of the GS1. Alternatively, you can think about the stakeholders, again, like women, different caste groups, different community groups, different regional groups. Or you can think about like parts of the question in any question. Again, in society, here the question is marriage. So what are the parts of a marriage? Like there are two people, like you can even say two adults. It could be from same sex or different gender. Or then you can say that there is a like kids are also part of the marriage as an institution. Thirdly, you can talk about how social sanction or social recognition is also part of the institution of marriage. So these are like parts. Each part you can use as a point in both, yes, supporting the motion and negating the motion. So here again you can talk about like kids, use kids to in one subheading, try to use that to show how it is revolving around kids, or how the number of kids are reducing as education is increasing, or how adoption as a means is changing the institution of marriage, or how joint family is reducing. So things like that. Again, the same points, like things like adults, the role of women, the role of men, role of patriarchy, role of kids, and all of that. Honor killing, absolutely. Like so religious sanction, community-wise marriage is still norm, or family values are still celebrated in media, popular culture, social sanctions, etc. You can talk about things like honor killings, kapanjayat, these things, or anything, caste-based violence or caste-based marriages, or anything pertinent. Just put it into the relevant subheading. One is supporting the motion, one is negating the motion, and then conclude it with how things are changing, or conclude it with something, as you said, something normative, some quote or some thinker's idea. Like ideally in society, I would say end it with relevance of how things are changing. Something like as I said, something like same sex marriages, or something like sologamy, or situationships, or things like that. Or relevance, like how relevant the marriage as an institution is still, or how it is still important, why is it still significant. You can quote a thinker if you know, or you can just write on your own. There is no necessity to quote a thinker. It's not like if you don't quote a thinker you'll get less marks. But if you know thinkers, if that comes to your mind quickly, you can use them. Like here I thought about Putnam's idea that community bonds are coming down. You can use those ideas, or like Arjun Appadurai's ideas of five scapes: mediascapes, technoscapes, financescapes, if you can connect it. Again, Baudelaire's idea that information is increasing in our time, but meaning is reducing. How you can connect that idea to the institution of marriage. Like these are just random things that came to my mind. So the whole idea is like widow remarriage. Yes, anything that you can connect it with. Whatever idea, thinker thing you can connect it with, try to liberally use them. So last question for today. Explain why suicides among young women are rising. Again, I don't have any clear idea, because in the paper you can't prepare separately for this particular question unless this is in the previous year question. But it's a society question. It's a 10 marker. So here again, 10 marker, 10 points, two or more subheadings. It's a society question. So how do you introduce? You can use a definition, like what is a suicide in your own words, or some idea if you know, or you can use some statistic that you remember if you remember, or you can use some survey, or you can quote somebody, or you can use a recent event in news. Like if it was like suicide among young women, nothing comes to my mind, any event, but I can think about I can define suicide and connected with young women. If it was question was just about how suicides are rising in among youth in India, I could think about Kota or IITs or something that was in news recently. If something comes to your mind recently, you can use that. And how do you conclude? Again, it's a society question. You can conclude it with relevance of why increased emphasis and this thing needs to go into this issue. Or you can talk about how things are changing, or you can talk about how government is taking certain steps, or UN government and local this things are taking certain steps like ABC, and how it needs to be taken forward further. And again, what are the dimensions in a society question? As I said, it could be women, it could be caste, it could be tribal issues, regionalism, communalism, urbanization, modernization. It's the same frame: globalization, poverty, inequality, social institutions. According to the question, you can use different social institutions, culture, identity. You can use social processes, something like Sanskritization, something like Westernization, something like tribe caste continuum, anthropology, sociology, or general things that come in the Indian Express, Hindu ideas, like anything related to social institutions, social processes, or things in the syllabus. Stakeholders like women, caste groups, tribal groups, different areas like different regions. things like regionalism again in syllabus, communalism again in syllabus, urbanization, modernization. So you can use all these and just come up with 5 points, and you need two subheadings. So here you can't negate the motion, that you can't say that this is not rising. So here you can use another way to come up with a second subheading, which is like you can divide you can come up with different types of issues. One could be structural issues, one could be non-structural issues. Okay, some questions. Did you keep the word yes and no explicitly? You can use that also if you think your time is yes, I mean less. But ideally, if you have time, you can use like proper subheadings. How, in the previous question, you can talk about how. What was the question? Yeah, how marriage as an like you can give the heading like marriage as a sacrament is losing value. Another subheading could be marriage as a sacrament is not losing value. Or you can even give yes, it is losing value. Another subheading would be no, it is not losing value. No issues. And please discuss your geography questions. Yes, in next session. Please discuss different dimensions. Evaluate, remark. Huh. So the dimensions, at least for me, I don't think they are very different. Like evaluate, remark, illustrate. Because even if it is evaluate, I would say you need examples. So illustrate also, you need to illustrate most of the points. But critically analyze, you need to give more, like both positives and negatives. So if it is only evaluate, illustrate, or examine or prove something like that, you need to give more points for whatever the question is suggesting. Like here, the question is, do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing value? So ideally, I would say you should give more points for yes, it is losing value, but still you need an alternative viewpoint. You should say that it is not losing value as well. But in critically analyze it, both dimensions are equally important. So to make it simple, I would say don't all the things like evaluate, everything boils down to the same thing. Only thing, if it is critically evaluate, positive, like both sides are equally important. In the other questions as well, both sides are important, but you need to give more points for whatever the question is directly suggesting. For essay paper and GS, for essay you can use these structures, but we'll come up with more things also in for when we're discussing essay and ethics. Ethics, we have other structures. This is more for society and history that we discussed today. Okay, so so in here, in the some of the points that I came up is like suicides among young women, intersectionality. That is two bases, the base of gender and base of caste. You can talk about car panchayats. You can talk about something like in northeast, or base like another intersectionality example could be gender and unemployment, or gender and inequality. Something like another question, another point is like total institutions. Goffman's idea about total institutions like patriarchy, marriage, etc. Foucault's idea like marriage, biopower, power over institutions, power over body, how that results in inequality and that fuels resistance. Or you can connect it with health, you can connect it with NFHS 5 insights, you can connect it with nutrition. 50% of reproductive age women are anemic, points like that. You can connect it with modernization, globalization. Thinkers like Nandini Gunawardene talks about how women are reduced to lower end service jobs, how that could be one of the socio-economic reasons why suicides are rising. Or migration, like these are all dimensions that general in society, but I can use these dimensions and then tweak it according to the question. So I just need to connect those dimensions to women and connect it with suicide, migration. And you can also provide examples of case studies like Seva, Kudumbashri. Kudumbashri, for example, connects, I think, 1 in 3 families or 1 in 4 families in Kerala. So that's a very good positive example wherein you have a case study showing how suicides can be reduced through institutional mechanisms. And recent issues you can quote. Conclusion, again, you can quote some thinker. Like here, something that came to my mind is like Geeta Sin, economist, how she says in some book that she edited, like women's movements and feminist encounters should connect horizontally and vertically with well-connected organizations such as the UN, and at the same time be decentralized, be at the local level, gram panchayat, like connecting with global and local things. Or you can connect it, end it with something that comes up in your mind. Yes, you can use anything, but try to use more things that are there in news, in sociology discussions, sociological discussions in paper. Like live-in is more famous. Hookup culture is more informal. So I would suggest use things which are more formally there in discussions, in newspapers, in textbooks, etc. But you can use them. No issues. Again, so this is what we plan for today. But then again, these are just suggestions. So nobody knows how UPSC thinks. or UPSC corrects, and again depending on the evaluator and all, there could be subjectivity. But then our idea, I think, is basically to have a framework, have some thumb rules, and to increase the factual intensity. Every point, if you can give examples or theory or connect it with the thinker, etc., and then in that, yes, postpartum depression, absolutely, not postpartum, yes, definitely. So things like that. So our idea is that every point you should increase the factual intensity, so that your points give you more, so that the chances of getting more marks are there. Because if your points, every point, if it has example or a thinker or an idea, like it's just either an example or a fact or a quote or a survey or a book or a fact or an example, something, some value in every point, and you start on a high and you end on a high, then chances of getting more marks in your mains paper in that particular question is realistically high. So our idea is to reduce the possibility of subjectivity. So if you have some factual intensity in your answer and you have good introductions, conclusions, and structures, chances are that you will get at least above average marks in every question, and cumulatively you will get very good marks. Chances of getting good marks are more. Okay, so that's it for today. All the very best. We'll try to add more sessions for other questions, structures, and some examples. So that's it from my side this today. All the very best. Good night.